It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Monday, April 10th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
A professor at St. Lawrence University is suing a fellow professor claiming she was drugged and raped at his house. She's also suing the university, arguing it mishandled the investigation. We'll have more details coming up.
Also, Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney is meeting with upstate farmers before federal debate on the next farm bill. Advocates for farmers say they're seeing a lot of new farmers in the region.
These people need support, and they need a lot of it. And, of course, that costs money.
Also on the show, Lake Champlain's lake trout are showing signs of repopulating naturally, but the DEC doesn't exactly know why.
So we view the fish communities in the lake holistically. So we're trying to balance the predator and prey dynamics, and we're continuously learning from research and sampling efforts, and then adjusting our stocking policies accordingly to maintain that balance.
Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman talked with the DEC, and we'll meet the community composter Compost for Good out of Jay in Essex County. All of that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by the Village Mercantile, Saranac Lake, partnering with local nonprofit organizations to sell their merchandise through their e-commerce store, villagemerc.com, and by Apothecary Chocolates, making gourmet chocolates by hand from all natural herbs, botanicals, and tree syrups, apothecarychocolates.com.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. An assistant professor at St. Lawrence University is suing a fellow assistant professor, claiming she was drugged and raped at his house. The anonymous woman is also suing the university, arguing it mishandled her sexual assault investigation. David Summerstein reports.
According to the lawsuit filed in federal court last week, Jane Doe went to her male colleague's house for what she expected to be dinner and a work session in April 2022. She alleges the assistant professor mixed her a cocktail she believes contained a date rape drug. After drinking it, she describes being, quote, physically helpless like a rag doll and unable to formulate words. She claims the man then raped her in an upstairs bedroom. Jane Doe reported the alleged assault through St. Lawrence University's Title IX process. The lawsuit accuses the university of engaging in, quote, victim blame and shame conduct, and saying she was not allowed to have a lawyer present when she was questioned, despite university policy allowing for that in sexual assault cases. Jane Doe also reported the incident to the Village of Canton police. According to the Watertown Daily Times, the police say the investigation is still ongoing and would not comment. A call to the accused professor's lawyer Friday afternoon wasn't returned. In an email, St. Lawrence University spokesperson Kim Ash said the university has a process for, quote, investigating misconduct allegations and retained an experienced independent investigator. She said the university provided the faculty member support when she made the allegations. She said the university believes there are, quote, substantial defenses to the lawsuit and will reply in court. After informing the college community of the lawsuit Thursday, University President Kate Morris wrote an email to the campus Friday, acknowledging that students are, quote, angry and recognizing their depth of concern about the university's procedure for handling sexual assault and harassment cases. The university has made counselors available and will be holding a student forum Wednesday evening. St. Lawrence University recently hired its first full-time Title IX coordinator, Lindsay Cohen. St. Lawrence's response to sexual harassment and assault complaints has been a contentious subject on its campus for years, as it has on many other North Country campuses. David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.
North Country Public Radio is owned by St. Lawrence University. The university had no editorial or other role in this reporting. Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney held a series of conversations with farmers this week across her district, which includes Watertown and Jefferson County. She wanted to hear farmers' priorities in advance of debate over the next farm bill. It sets policy for agriculture, conservation, nutrition, and food assistance programs, and it's up for renewal this year. WRVO's Ava Pukac was at the meeting in Oswego and has this report.
Paul Forestier, director of the Oswego County Cornell Cooperative Extension, says the Farm Bill needs to ensure farms matter equally, regardless of their size.
Agriculture in Oswego County is really made up of family farms. There are some larger entities, but it's the family farm that's the backbone of what happens in agriculture in Oswego County.
Forestier mentioned needing educational support, especially as new people move to the field. He says they have 28 new farmers, and about half of them have no experience in farming.
These are people that have had other careers, and they finished their career, and they've decided that they want to move to Oswego County and become involved in agriculture. And so these people need support, and they need a lot of it. And, of course, that costs money.
Terry Wilbur is the county clerk of Oswego County and chairman of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committees for the National Association of Counties. He pushed for investments in broadband infrastructure, saying about 1 in every 4 rural families does not have a sufficient connection to the internet. Wilbur also wants to see crop insurance expanded in the Farm Bill.
Counties support expanding crop insurance to cover additional crops, livestock, and poultry. Crop insurance will help the bottom line for our farmers and help the unavoidable perils that come with the industry.
With 12 titles to the bill and an upcoming deadline, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney says she expects the process to be contentious as the bill is hashed out.
It's going to be challenging. I hope we can get it done by October 1st, which is our deadline, but I'm not absolutely sure that's going to happen.
Tenney says Congress will need to come together on the bill as issues are urgent, not just in upstate New York, but for farms across the country. In Syracuse, I'm Ava Pukac for North Country Public Radio.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Just ahead, lake trout are making a comeback in Lake Champlain. We'll have more on this coming up from Kara Chapman in just a few minutes here on Northern Light. And we want to say a huge thank you to everyone who contributed during our spring fundraiser over the last 2 weeks. You're incredible. You make this station possible and to be such a rich and wonderful place to live and work. Thank you so much for your support. And if you haven't gotten a chance to contribute, there is still time. You can give now online at ncpr.org/give. And thank you so much.
Music by Evan Veenstra in Gananoque, Ontario. Check out more of his music on our website, ncpr.org/_.
A St. Lawrence County grand jury has indicted a Lake Placid man on multiple charges stemming from 2 murders. 47-year-old Adam Smith was first accused of killing 67-year-old William Freeman in Rossi on March 1st. Police later linked him to the February 11th murder of 72-year-old Ronald Durham in Gouverneur. Smith faces 2 counts each of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter, and first-degree assault. Other charges include robbery, burglary, and larceny. Smith was still in custody at the St. Lawrence County Jail on Friday.
The city of Ogdensburg says it won't be hiring anyone new for the rest of the fiscal year. The city council passed the hiring freeze last week. The mood between some of the council members and the mayor is contentious, according to the Watertown Daily Times. One city councilor who voted against the hiring freeze says it violates the city charter by cutting off the city manager's power to make hiring decisions. But the mayor says the city can't afford to hire anyone right now. Ogdensburg currently has a $2 million budget deficit, according to the Watertown Daily Times.
A Watertown police officer was suspended without pay Friday after an investigation found he allegedly drove drunk on the job. Police say Officer Ernest J. Miller was on duty and driving a marked Watertown patrol vehicle when the incident occurred on March 7th. They say a chemical test showed his blood alcohol content was 0.17. That's more than double the legal limit in New York State. Miller was relieved from duty that day. He turned himself in Friday morning and was charged with misdemeanor driving while intoxicated. He's scheduled to appear in Watertown City Court later this month. City Manager Kenneth Mix suspended Miller without pay pending a disciplinary hearing.
It's officially mud season in the Adirondacks. State officials are urging hikers to avoid climbing above 2,500 feet until trails have dried out. There's still a lot of snow and ice in the high peaks. When that melts and the ice rots, hikers can erode the trail and damage sensitive roots and plants. If you do come across mud or slush on the trails at lower elevations, you should walk through it rather than around it to limit damage to the environment. The mud advisory in the Adirondacks could last until June, until the trails dried out.
The group that oversees fish stocking in Lake Champlain says the lake trout population is making a comeback. The Lake Champlain Fish and Wildlife Management Cooperative says it's seeing signs of more natural trout reproduction in recent years. So this fall, they'll once again reduce the number of stocked lake trout released into the lake. They'll put in around 41,000, which is about half the amount they put in annually for decades.
So we really want them to be able to reproduce on their own so that we don't have to keep stocking them. We want them to be able to do it themselves.
That's Nicole Balk. She's a biologist at the State Department of Environmental Conservation who works on Lake Champlain. She told Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman that exactly what's behind the lake trout population's recent rebound is a mystery.
We don't know why, and there's quite a few research projects right now starting because of that. We're trying to figure out why.
Any theories, I guess, yet?
No. There's too many variables in the lake. We'd have to do quite a few studies to narrow it down.
Okay, I gotcha. Can you talk a bit more about the overarching goals of the restocking program and what are the next steps, as far as trout goes specifically, aside from, reducing the restocking levels? Like, what are the next steps?
So the goal for lake trout in Champlain is to maintain an abundant population that supports the quality recreational fishery, but also strives to increase the number of wild fish in the fishery, hence the natural reproduction that we're looking for. So we view the fish communities in the lake holistically. We're trying to balance the predator and prey dynamics, and we're continuously learning from research and sampling efforts, and then adjusting our stocking policies accordingly to maintain that balance.
And I'm wondering, because I saw that stocking levels for similar fish like landlocked Atlantic salmon, they're going to remain the same for now. So can you talk about, what's going on with those species? And do we know anything about why they perhaps aren't rebounding like the trout are?
Yeah, it has to do with a basic difference in their life cycles. Like people think salmon and lake trout are similar, but they're actually quite different. So in Lake Champlain, the lake trout spend their whole lives in the lake. And so if something changes in the lake, it affects their eggs, how they spawn, their survival, and all the way up through their life cycle. Salmon are different because they spend the first few years of their lives in the rivers. And so they're not going to be affected the same way that the lake trout are. They're going to spend time in the river and then come to the lake, and they're not going to get whatever that boost that the lake trout got. The other salmonids, mostly we stock them. They're just as a recreational fishery, we're not stocking them to restore them in the lake. So we'll just continue to stock them for the recreational anglers to go out and fish and possibly harvest.
And can you talk about how, trying to restore natural reproduction of these fish, like how does that tie into, climate change and like the health of the lake?
Well, climate change is something that we're definitely concerned about, and lake trout are a cold water species of char, so there's a good chance that they could be affected by changes like increases in water temperature. So Fisheries is aware of the issue, and the department is pretty active in managing it through the Office of Climate Change, which is a pretty new department.
And I'm wondering, Nicole, if there's anything else that people listening to this should know, or what can they do when it comes to Lake Champlain's fish populations, or is there any way they can help in the restoration process?
One of the biggest ways they can help is by participating in our angler surveys. So Lake Champlain have got an open water fishing survey and an ice fishing survey. And if they're interested in helping with salmonids, the open water survey would be their best avenue. So they just, if there's a clerk at one of the boat launches when they're coming off the lake, they can tell them, what they're fishing for, what they caught, what they kept, and that data goes into a database, and that goes into, we'll talk about that in addition to all the other sampling efforts and try to get a better picture of what's going on with the lake trout population. We're starting kind of revamping an old angler diary program, and it's now going to be an angler app, and that's going to be coming out in June, and it's going to be just a beta test to start with, but we're hoping to get information on any of the salmonid species if people are fishing in the lake or in the rivers.
Just a fun question. Do you have like a favorite fish to track or fish for?
My favorite fish has always been yellow perch. I just think they're fun. They're very pretty, very colorful in the summer, and they're easy to unhook, so that's one reason I like them.
That was DEC biologist Nicole Balk speaking with Champlain Valley reporter Kara Chapman.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. We'll check out the open source community composter Compost for Good out of Essex County in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note coming up at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
If you thought yesterday was nice, today is going to be even nicer. We've got sunshine in the forecast and highs in the low 60s for much of our region. Winds out of the south-southwest. Of course, you thought yesterday was nice. It was gorgeous. Southwest, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Higher gusts at times. Lows tonight in the 30s. Under partly cloudy skies tomorrow. Partly cloudy, highs low 60s. Wednesday, partly cloudy, highs low 60s. Thursday, mostly sunny, highs in the 70s. And it looks like we'll probably see temperatures highs in the 70s Friday and Saturday as well, with a mix of sun and clouds. In Canton right now, sunny, 39 degrees.
A lot of people are composting on their own, a pile in the backyard or one of those rolling barrels. But it can be difficult for entire communities to manage that waste in a sustainable way. One organization in the Adirondacks is trying to change that.
Compost for Good in Jay is partnering with communities throughout the North Country to reduce waste and water pollution and create a more sustainable food system. The founders have developed 4-foot wide, 20-foot long composters that look kind of like a spinning oil drum. Normally, these can cost upwards of $150,000, but Compost for Good's open source community composter clocks in at a tenth of that, with an effort to reduce the cost even more. Mitch Teich sat down with its founders, John Culpepper, Katie Culpepper, and Jennifer Perry, to hear about their efforts to simplify the composting process and make it accessible on a large scale.
Organic matter wants to decompose no matter what, and it will do so in just about any kind of environment. If you want to produce really high-quality compost, you've got to manage the environmental conditions that are right for the microbial life that do that work. And it's hard to do that, the management of that, in an open pile system. You've got to be on it all the time. It's much, much easier to do that in an enclosed environment. And so The value add that I brought was to reduce the upfront cost of these drum composters. These drum composters they are amazing at optimizing the environmental conditions for the microbes. And what I planned to do initially before Jen and I connected was to get North Country School to purchase one. But good grief, they were $175,000, $200,000. And I thought, I think I can build one with a material cost of $15,000. So we put our heads together to figure out a way to build this thing for $15,000. We didn't have a clue whether we could actually do it or not. And Greg LeClaire was really the brains behind this. Greg has unfortunately passed on, but he and I became quite close with him doing a lot of contracting work at North Country School. And he agreed to take this on because he was just a curious man and a talented man. And so he would keep coming up with ideas, and I'd say, nope, too complicated. You have to simplify it. Finally, we got it to a point where it was simple enough to put together. He put it together. We smoke tested it at the North Country School campus, and it's been running continuously for over 6 years, I guess.
Over 6 years.
And the goal now, my goal, is to get it down to a point where there's no welding involved, and it's even simpler to put together, therefore even less expensive to build.
And I think the value add of Compost for Good is not necessarily that we came up with a brilliant way of composting, but was the desire to make that available to others.
Exactly.
The design being open and available to anyone who was interested, our desire to really put ourselves out there to start connecting people with each other, to the information, to grant opportunities. That's the kind of magic of Compost for Good is not that we're creating the methods, but we're trying to connect people to the technology, the information, the inspiration, etc., to get into community scale composting.
And by the way, there are a lot of different ways to compost, some very, very simple ways. We support all those systems. But at a community scale where you're processing 50 to 75,000 to 100,000 pounds of feedstock per year, you've got to have a well-controlled, well-managed system. And that's what this provides.
Talk about why it's a good fit with an overall organization like Adirondack Action, because I'm not sure people necessarily think of composting in terms of social justice or where it fits in society.
I'm really glad you asked that question because we're about much more than just upcycling organic material. It really fits into the food system. Katie, you can elaborate. Jen, you can as well. But we're at the nexus of soil fertility, of carbon sequestration, of increasing the nutrient content of foods, of making foods less expensive to grow, helping farmers to reduce their input costs. So we're doing way more than simply composting materials.
What is really hot right now is talking about food systems, local food systems, food sovereignty, equity, and what's often left out of that is composting, is what happens at the end of that process. And if you're not composting, then it's a broken system. It continues to perpetuate this linear, not connected loop. And when you bring in composting, then all of a sudden you have this closed system, this interconnected network of farmers and producers and consumers and cooks and et cetera, all working together to build a really robust, resilient local food system.
John Culpepper, Katie Culpepper, and Jennifer Perry, the founders of Compost for Good, a company working to provide sustainable and affordable composting for communities throughout the North Country. They spoke with station manager Mitch Tyke on Northwards, and you can hear the entire interview by visiting ncpr.org/northwards. Music by Dan Berggren out of Ballston Spa. And just a reminder that you've got a couple of opportunities to hear Dan in concert. He'll be giving a concert as part of the Cabin Fever series at Tawny Traditional Arts in upstate New York this Friday night starting at 7:30 at Tawny on Main Street in Canton. And Dan also is going to be hosting an Earth Day concert at Cafe Lena in Saratoga Springs on Sunday, April 23rd. That's coming up at Cafe Lena Sunday evening from 7 to 9 at Cafe Lena in Saratoga Springs. So you've got a couple of opportunities to hear some great music by Adirondack songsmith Dan Berggren. Tradition-based songsmith with roots in the Adirondacks who writes with honesty, humor, and a strong sense of place. And we'll hear music and conversation with Dan Berggren. 50 years, celebrating 50 years of creating great music in our region. That conversation with Dan Berggren coming up later this week on Northern Light.
So many events going on throughout the community, including today in Ogdensburg. The Public Library is hosting an after Easter egg hunt. They've got an egg hunt, games, and crafts, including a take-home craft. You can find out more from the Ogdensburg Public Library's website, ogdensburgpubliclibrary.org/youth services for their after Easter egg hunt today from 11 to 1.
If you are an antique book collector, the Ogdensburg Public Library is hosting an antique and collectible book auction coming up Monday, April 24th, starting at 5. Preview starts at 4 o'clock. They'll be selling about 500 books in various conditions. First edition, signed volumes, collections, maps, stamp collections. Many of the books unusual, if not rare, valued in the hundreds of dollars. That's coming up at the Ogdensburg Public Library on Monday, April 24th at 5 in the afternoon.
And don't forget to check out the new exhibit currently on display at the Brush Art Gallery at St. Lawrence University. It's called Paper Terrain. It's a collection of collages by Midwestern Indiana-based collage artist Mary Jones. Very interesting. They're sort of cartographic collages with these figures in the forefront that dominates. You got to check them out. You can find out more from stlawU.edu from the Art Gallery's website, or you can head to the Art Gallery to check it out in person.
Keep up with North Country Public Radio throughout the day on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us news@ncpr.org. Our theme music is by Danny Thomas.
Until tomorrow, I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Be well.